I was at Ohio State, and they had a program called Selective Volunteers. So I knew I'm going into service anyway, so I figured I might as well go in the Navy. So I did, and I volunteered, went to boot camp at Great Lakes, and that was an interesting experience. I didn't have nearly as much trouble in boot camp as a lot of the guys did, because my mother had made me wash windows and clean johns and stuff like that, so I didn't have too much trouble in boot camp. Then I had wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and they told me in boot camp that if I struck for an aviation rank or rate, I'd have a better chance of getting into a fighter program to learn how to be a pilot. So I did, and I struck for aviation ordnance. Went to Norman, Oklahoma, and that was the last I ever heard about. Going to aviation school. But when I got out of Norman, I was third class aviation ordnanceman. Was sent to Atlantic City, New Jersey, and joined a squadron there. And the most interesting experience and one of the most memorable experiences I had there was occurred one morning. All of us were sitting in the armory, and our chief petty officer came in and said, "Boys," he said, "I want you to come out and come with me." So we did, and we followed him out onto the tarmac. And apparently, a plane captain had put a starter cartridge into the belly of an F-4U. It backed out. The propeller weren't running, and he backed into the propeller. And the biggest piece of him was from here to here. Chief took us back in the armory, and he said, "Now, boys," he said, "you're going to be aboard ship, and you're going to be around propellers a lot, day in and day out. This is what happens if you're not very, very careful." And believe me, we were very careful, and we didn't lose a soul, and nobody lost anything as far as propellers were concerned. We left Norman, we left Atlantic City, and were assigned to, I think it was Fighter Squadron 15. We went from there to the Naval Air Station in Norfolk, and I was assigned to the Hornet, and we went aboard ship for the shakedown crew. I was a plank owner, and we had a good shakedown. Normally a shakedown cruise is about, I think, 3 months, or at least a month to 3 months. We had 2 weeks. Our ship was going to be named the Kearsarge, but while she was under construction and toward the latter part of construction, the CV-8, which was our predecessor, was sunk. And they changed the name of our ship from the Kearsarge to the Hornet, and we were CV-12. Took off on our 2-week shakedown cruise, ran into a couple of heavy storms up around Cape Hatteras, and lost a plane or two over the side. The storm was so tough it snapped steel cables. The planes were anchored to the flight deck with steel cables as big around as your little, and it snapped those cables, and from there we went back to Newport News, and then very quickly went down through the Panama Canal and up to San Diego. We took some Marines over to Pearl Harbor, unloaded them, and we headed out to sea, and we had I was aboard ship about 18 months, and we had 7 major engagements, plus the first and second battle of the Philippine Sea during the next, well, up until 1945. So we saw quite a few kamikazes. Scary as hell. We knew that the kamikaze pilots were trained on an island called Kyushu in southern Japan, and they had funeral services for them before they took off, and the word was that they taught them how to take off, but didn't teach them how to land. But I can remember very, very clearly one incident where a Betty, which was a twin-engine Japanese aircraft, was coming in, and she kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And we had been asked to pass ammunition to the Marines who were manning, I don't know, 20 millimeter or 40 millimeter guns. And we were passing ammunition to them, and I kept seeing this plane come, and I went back and sat down. And I looked down, and I was sitting on a case of ammunition. So I thought, boy, that's no place to be sitting. Anyway, that plane was shot down very close to our ship. In fact, when we went past the wreckage, it was burning, and I looked over the catwalk and singed my eyebrow. We had several situations where we had close calls, but ended in Okinawa, or after the Okinawa operation. Okinawa was really tough. We had worked there for, I guess several weeks at least, and our aircraft were bombing the island and so on and so forth, and this typhoon came along, and I've never been in a storm like that in all my life. I was in my bunk on the third deck of the ship, and the general quarters signal rang. Got up, got dressed, started up to the flight deck, and as I went up the ladder, the ship was heaving so much that going up the ladder up to the flight deck, you'd go up 3 steps, then 1 step, then 3 steps, and we got up there and rode that storm out. During the eye of the storm, which is a calm in the middle of the storm, but I went up on deck during the eye of the storm. Now the flight deck on that carrier, I think, was 90 feet above the water, and the ship would go down in a trough, and then of course come up. When she went down in a trough, I had to look up like that to the top of the wave. So those waves were as high as a 5-story building, at least, maybe more. But that was a very, very, very scary situation. We lost the bow. A wave came up under the flight deck, crashed down onto the flight deck, and broke both sides of the flight deck off. Now we're talking about breaking 8-inch teak wood planks. Broke them off the side of the ship, and of course that halted our forward operation as far as taking off planes. So the skipper decided after the storm subsided, the skipper decided we'd try to take planes off by putting the ship in reverse and going back and taking planes off of the stern in forward position so we could land them. We did that for 3 days, and it just really didn't work out. So they told us that we were going to have to go back to the United States. I had, after 6 operations and going into the 7th, I had decided that, boy, maybe our time's up, or going to be up pretty soon.